Wow. So all I really gotta say is wow. Blood Orange is a British singer, going by the name Devonte Hynes. Do you pronounce it like the ketchup or not? Just like let me know, because I'm not sure. Been around for quite some time. I first became aware of his presence back in 2016 when he released Freetown Sound. Been paying attention to him ever since to see if his sound would evolve or see if he would, be a more popular name here in the US. He was also featured on A$AP Rocky's Testing album. So if you believe you haven't heard this artist before, you probably have. Going into Negro Swan, I wasn't expecting anything beyond what I got off Freetown Sound for the most part. So going into this album and listening to a couple songs right off the bat, I was hearing a lot more psychedelia, I was hearing a lot more alternative pop music, I was hearing a lot more funk, a lot more emphasis on instruments like the guitar, which seems to be one of Dev's specialties. Now, if this isn't like a Russ record where I have to give him credit for mixing and mastering and producing and playing the instruments himself, I mean, the instrumentation of this album actually sounds very good, and it's one of the few things that I think makes this album work so well for me, because normally I wouldn't be interested in an album with the subject matter pretty much being a message to the past. It's a reinvention of himself, but just a kind of like a finger to his past in a way. Not a bitter finger, just I appreciate what I learned, but this was still bad kind of finger. Jason Arce is a big component for this album for me, because he ties some songs together beautifully, like the sound, especially like on the saxophone. Whenever he comes through on the saxophone, the song is an instant hit. The song is an instant, beautifully crafted instrumental the minute he comes in with the saxophone. Orlando does pretty much get you started in letting you know somewhat what the album is going to be about, its premise. Second track, Saint, has so many components. Ava Rain, for instance, adds a lot vocally to the beginning of her portion. And I guess the thing for this track that gets me more excited is it doesn't seem like a compilation of artists just thrown into a song. It feels more like a bouquet of different flowers on one track, as opposed to a bunch of artists just collaborating. Speaking of flowers, the next track, Take Your Time, sounds like a flower blossoming just musically. When Jason comes in with the flute and with Dev singing and Ian Isaiah's background vocals, it like the ambience of this track is orgasmic. It's almost like space rock, but R&B. On the next track, Tay She, I believe I'm pronouncing that wrong, so I'll just say She, actually starts the track off really strong. I don't mind the Diddy vocals. I think everything ties into this track very nicely. I do think at one point Diddy's vocals do begin slurring, almost as if he's drunk at some point, or there's just less energy. I don't really like that, but his performance in between the breaks and the hook do work, because it makes the track seem like it's not just one singing track. It makes it a little bit less predictable. With the next track, Jewelry, again, it's the ambience, it's the atmosphere. There's even a trade-off between the bass and the drums at one point. Then it all comes together near the later portion of the track. Around the last minute and a half or so, it's just the guitar and then it's Dev over it. In the final moments of this track, there is a lot of confidence, a lot of awareness, going against social norms and expressing instead of repressing the emotions that may make you appear more flamboyant. Something referenced earlier in the album on Orlando at the end of the track, saying, why would I want to be the person that does the least when I could be the one that does the most? I'd also recommend the music video for this track, because the explanation is great. Ty is even featured in the music video as kind of like a representative of being flamboyant. He's dressed as an angel. Next track, Family, with Janet Mock speaking or narrating. She pretty much tells you that family is something that should be defined, not something that should be restrained to your blood. Family, for the most part, is something that should be chosen individually, not something that should be bound or limited to your biology. Again, Jason is beautiful with the saxophone in the background. I really like and appreciate how most of her narration doesn't go unaccompanied by an instrumental or by an instrument. I think if these were just bare, I don't think they will work as well. With Charcoal Baby, it's, a clear reference to the pigment of his skin, but an appreciation instead of a critique of it this time. And, the vocal layering and the instrumentation make this track musically just a joy to listen to. Vulture Baby is so frustratingly lovely to listen to because of its length. Quite clearly talking about Culture Vulture. A$AP Rocky may be one of my favorite features on this album because of the way he delivers his lines, especially when they're both talking about these oral sex references. There's a lot of references here that tie into your jaw hurting from chewing too much gum or chewing gum too often. And there are a lot of lyrics here, especially in Dev's verse, that kind of hint towards the idea of just being tired, being annoyed, or just not really being able to give much energy to anything else. I think that the title Chewing Gum works perfectly for the point of the track. The best singing on this album appears on Holy Will, where it just seems like you're going to church. Ian Isaiah's vocal performance is ridiculous. I just can't understand how these type of vocalists just fly under the radar. I don't understand it. Track number 11 is a track where he speaks on how he was bullied or jumped as a kid. And then the track is pretty muddy. It's pretty gloomy. The atmosphere is very appropriate, for the subject matter of this track. I like how on Janet's narration she kind of compares not being yourself to a performance. The next track, Nappy Wonder, has, I don't know if it's the most addicting hook, but it is a crazy hook.
Feelings never had no ethics. Feelings never have been ethical. Feelings never had no ethics.
Implying you shouldn't feel as if you're doing something wrong simply by accepting your feeling. You shouldn't chastise yourself for experiencing an emotion. How you respond to these things are different from how they hit you. Nappy Wonder is probably my second or third favorite track. On Runnin, there's a lot going on with this track, from Georgia's interlude to Janet's narration to Dev's vocals to the instrumental progression and regression, but rarely does it all come together just to make one great song. They seem more like parts to enjoy separately from the song itself, and when you try to put them all on the same plate, it's like putting cinnamon on top of honey, on top of maple syrup. It's just entirely too much. All great pieces separately, but just too much together, in my opinion. And there is something legally wrong with you if you don't think that Out of Your League with Steve Lacy doesn't immediately open up and remind you of When Doves Cry from Prince. It sounds like 80s funk and new wave, and I love the idea of the track, kind of like confirmation that the person that you're seeking or the person that you're after right now is out of your league. It's kind of like confirmation that the one you want so bad is bad for you and you need to acknowledge it, and maybe that you're convincing yourself out of this necessity that you've built in your head. Don't have to feel no expectation that aren't thoughts that you conceive. I love that line. Kind of like an implication of how little this person would have to do to make you happy. Oh my God, I love that line. Don't have to feel no expectations that your thoughts don't conceive. Unless you think it, they don't have to do anything beyond what you feel would make you happy, because you just think that highly of them. And I also like the final track with the acoustic guitar, kind of like all of this coming back around. He's finally accepting himself and looking at himself in the mirror like, I really am the shit. I really am cool. I really am me. All in all, as an album, it's extremely cohesive. It works really well as an atmospheric R&B kind of psychedelic adventure. I do think that the atmosphere and the ambience of this album works perfectly, especially for the subject matter. I mean, some of the tracks that are supposed to be muddy and cloudy are muddy and cloudy based off memory. Negro Swan kind of being a representation of what the public at some moments may perceive as ugliness, but in his mind turned into a strength. Saying the color of this individual's skin hasn't changed the fact that it is what it is, a beautiful creature. I'd say my only issue with this album is kind of the underwritten material of some of the songs, and although it is cohesive, I would like him to be a little bit more descriptive when it comes to the point of some other tracks. He does seem pretty cryptic in some of his writing, so it doesn't always make for songs that are obviously supposed to be interpreted one way or the other. I do like the freedom of interpretation for this album because a lot of it is pretty open, even if it does paint this specific theme. But knowing that there is a theme of acceptance here, I do want some of the tracks to be a little bit heavier on explanation and a little bit clearer. I do love the way he uses his features and doesn't make a big deal out of guest appearances. They all feel like they fit on the song and they don't feel like they're just brought in. I think the sound of this album does aid in him being able to use the same vocal tone for most of the project and let his features do whatever it is that they want to do. But I do think he could tackle more vocal tones or ranges just to see where he could go outside of the comfortability that he's given himself. I love the vocal layering on this project though. Not only does it add, to the ambient effect that I feel from the beginning track, but it brings so much life to some of the tracks, even if the production and the instrumental in the background of whatever track I might be talking about is a little bit more minimalist. Overall, it's just an acceptance of oneself and an acknowledgement that I've always been beautiful. It just took me up until this point to notice. Being an individual that I guess has always been comfortable in my own skin, my main priority in life has always been to take care of a few things that I deemed as important, and anybody else that didn't hold those same morals or values, I didn't really care about their opinion of me as a person, because at the end of the day, I only needed a few things to validate my existence, never the opinion of an outside individual or another person. So hearing this album was a little strange for me because I couldn't necessarily identify with it, but hearing what he's saying and the way that he's saying it, it is a very intimate album. Blood Orange, Negro Swan. Really enjoyed this project. Definitely getting the vinyl. The vinyl's gonna go somewhere over there. It's definitely going on the wall. I've already made my purchase, so I appreciate you guys for watching. Please check the album out if you're looking for some alternative kind of R&B, kind of soul, kind of psychedelic. Even like I said, hints on track number 14 with Steve Lacy, Out of Your League, that have this old 80s funk and new wave kind of material. I think you'll probably enjoy it. I'll see y'all next time. I'm out, and yeah, please enjoy the album. Peace.